Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sam Beast YouTube channel, and today we have a webinar from a session that I did way back in the summertime at the ITAM Review Wisdom event. I've tweaked it a little bit and this is called We're Going Ham to the Future. So this webinar is all about hardware asset management, the journey it's kind of come on over the past few years and where it's going in the future. There is a theme behind this as always, and this is based on the absolute classic film that is Back to the Future. We're going ham to the future, we're going back to the future. You can see where I've gone with this. So there are lots of themes towards hardware asset management and also the film Back to the Future, which is an absolute classic, one of my favourite films ever. So yeah, bear with me with some of the links between ham and Back to the Future. Hopefully you can see them and hopefully you find it useful. So let's dig straight into the webinar. Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. I'm not going to do an impression for all of these. So if we have a look back at hardware asset management, there was a clear change when the pandemic hit in 2020. Hardware asset management was almost forced into changing. And to be honest with you, it was the absolute kick that it needed. Ham didn't really have a lot of love pre that time. The focus was on software asset management, software licensing and software compliance. And, you know, rightly so, because of auditing, complicated licensing models, etc., etc. However, hardware asset management has had a huge resurgence recently. It is now a really big part of IT asset management, and we're looking less at the silos of SAM and HAM and rather looking at ITAM as a whole. And this kick and this emphasis has really been a focus since 2020 and that global pandemic. It enhanced that focus on how users are actually using hardware, very similar to how we're currently tracking software usage. We started to look at how users are using hardware. Do they actually need that model, that specification? Do they need a laptop and a tablet? Do they need a company phone? Do they need a laptop, a desktop, a phone, a tablet, all of these printers, a personal scanner, whatever else that they had? We really started to drill down into how and why our users are actually using the hardware that they've been provided. Due to supply chain issues, it also kicked off a review of the lifecycle management of hardware assets. Suddenly, we couldn't get kit. We really struggled to get any kind of new kit to replace old ones or even to provide hardware for people that were starting to work from home. This put a spotlight on how often that refresh cycle was happening. Some organizations who were still cash rich realized the age of their estate and the fact they needed to refresh things, and that actually laptops that they currently have weren't good enough to run some of the software and applications that they were using. So that spotlight on, okay, how often are we refreshing our hardware? How often do we need to refresh it? How old is our current fleet? Okay, we need to do a hardware refresh now on X amount of our estate because it's old. What about our server infrastructure? Can it cope with working from home? We've got all of these servers that are actually the hardware was end of life a few years ago, but we've not replaced it yet. Loads of things started coming out of the woodwork during the pandemic as to the age of the fleet of an organization and the infrastructure for organizations. Like I mentioned though, the supply chain issues caused a big problem with actually being able to provide equipment to home working users and being able to actually do those hardware refreshes, because at the time vendors weren't able to produce the hardware. A lot of this stuff was created in China, manufactured in China. And obviously that's where the pandemic started. So they weren't able to get kit out into Europe and to the Americas and to the wider APAC region. So there was actually cases where vendors and resellers were coming and saying, well, bid. We have this amount of stock. How much would you give it? How much would you give us for it? And they were actually pitting people against each other to bid for hardware simply because they didn't have the stock. It was like gold dust. It was like gold dust. Unfortunately, couple that in with budget cuts. Some organisations, it went the other way. Due to the pandemic and what was going on, they had to reduce their spend on hardware. And what better way to optimise your existing hardware estate than with hardware asset management, than with ITAM? ITAM can help you support those budget cuts and optimise your existing hardware. And that's exactly what we did. There was a huge wake-up call as well for organisations during the pandemic on how bad their asset management databases and configuration management databases were. People were taking equipment off desks, they were taking monitors, they were taking desktops in some cases, and organisations had a very inaccurate AIMDb or CMDB or no form of AIMDb whatsoever. So this kit was leaving the organisation and just going missing. It was going walkies and they had no idea where it had gone, who had taken it, even what model it was in some cases. It was carnage. But fast forward to 2024 and when we're doing this webinar now, and we're seeing the first cycle and knock-on effects from that pandemic from 2020 and 2021. The purchases that were made in 2020 and 2021 are now due for a refresh now. I know, time flies. Life comes at you pretty hard sometimes. They're now due for a refresh if you're following a 3 or 4 year life cycle, which you should be for your end user devices. So they now need to be refreshed. This, in turn, means that some of those hardware refreshes from what you were doing 3 or 4 years ago may actually be quite big now. The organisation may have looked back then and gone, right, okay, we've got the supply chain, we can get the make and model that we need, we're going to refresh our legacy fleet, we're working from home, it's a great opportunity to refresh our fleet, get everyone on within life cycle, reduce our technical debt, do ITAD, raise some money, etc. But now you're at that point where that huge outlay 3 or 4 years ago is now coming back round and the kit that you purchased is now end of life. So you need to go through and do that hardware refresh again. But again, the world has changed. 2024, budgets, money, the economy, everything to do with that is in a really difficult position for a lot of organisations, and you may not have the budget to do all of that refreshing. And that is a challenge now that we are finding with hardware asset management and IT asset management as a whole. There was a lot of hardware model reevaluations. Do we really need this spec? Do we really need it to be this thin? And do we really need it to be this light? Actually, is there a very similar product that we can provide our end users that pretty much does the same sort of thing? It provides the same speeds, it provides the same experience, but is X amount of dollars per device cheaper. In some cases, hundreds of dollars per device cheaper. That was a big factor back when the supply chain issues were happening, where people were having to adapt and use perhaps models that weren't part of their approved hardware convention. And they're reevaluating that now because of the focus on hardware asset management, IT asset management, because of the state of the economy right now. Any savings that you can make while not upsetting the apple course, organizations will absolutely do. And having a look at hardware models, it's almost low-hanging fruit in some cases. If you've previously been buying a top-range Lenovo, Dell, HP, Microsoft laptops, for example, now you can look at it and think, okay, maybe we don't need that top spec. Maybe we can do with a $300 cheaper device that still runs the applications that we need, still looks and feels okay, but may not be the ultra lightweight one that your users are previously used to having. Maybe the screen size is smaller because actually you're integrating back into the office now and users can dock the device now and they have monitors. Oh, sorry, hit the microphone. Users can have monitors now. So yeah, reevaluating the models that you're providing is another factor that we're currently taking into when looking at hardware asset management and optimization. Mass AIMDb updates to ensure data validation is something that we're still struggling with. 4 years on from the 2020, 2021 pandemics, it covered that whole range, right? We are still finding asset management databases that are in a mess. They haven't been updated. They haven't been loved. They haven't been well managed. And we're still at a point where we're trying to clean that up. We're still trying to figure out where equipment went 3 or 4 years ago. And as you can imagine, that is a huge challenge. There's been a number of organizations where we've gone in, we've found the procurement information for the hardware, but we have no record of where it has gone since 2020 and 2021. We think we gave it to this user, but this user has now left. So what do? You have to draw a line under it and say, look, we've rinsed all of our records, we've checked all of our inventory tools, it hasn't been online for a set period of time. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to write it off. We're just going to have to say that it's a missing asset. We don't know where it's gone. But having AIMDBs in a position where they're still showing us in use assigned to a lever, or in use with no assigned lever, or in stock when it's not in stock, we are finding that across the board with large organizations, small organizations. This is a new pandemic, right, of inactive AIMDBs. And that's something that we're still trying to fix now to make sure that the AIMDBs get way more accurate, more related to the current state of affairs within an organization. And the other challenge that we're currently finding as well, post this fallout from 2020 and 2021, are the resources to actually do the physical hardware refreshes. Depending on how your organization is structured, you physically need someone to prepare the device. You may have a third-party managed service that actually does all that for you. Great, amazing, and sends it directly to your users or the organization. But then someone still needs to be there to physically hand it out to the user. Someone still needs to be there to update the AIMDB. Other organizations do it in-house. They receive the stock into them, they load the image, they arrange it with the user comes back, brings their old one, etc., etc. And resources is a big challenge. You've seen all over LinkedIn, all over the news, the amount of organizations that are letting go of staff and not giving you the extra headcount to be able to do things like this. So you're stuck. You've got an aging fleet. You've got limited budget to replace that aging fleet that back in 2020 and 2021 you did a big bang on, and you've got no resources to do the physical hardware refreshes. It's a rock and a hard place. But if you are struggling with stuff like that, please use the power of ITAM. Can we extend the lifespan by another year? Which are the most urgent equipment that we need to do a refresh on? We've only got a limited budget. Okay, let's see. Can we make the most urgent, oldest equipment that we need to refresh? Will that be covered by the limited budget that we have? Use your ITAM skills. If you don't have any internal ITAM resources, feel free to contact and reach out. My email is down below. I can help you with this kind of stuff. So yeah, resources required for physical hardware refreshes. That's the kind of fallout that we've had since the 2020-2021 pandemic. 1.21 gigawatts. Great Scott! A classic line from Doc there in Back to the Future. What a film! What a film! And there's some great headings that I've got from this one that run through this webinar. So current challenges, just to recap then on what we've already been speaking about, still trying to establish what on earth happened in 2020, where the equipment went, those horribly inaccurate AIMDBs and CMDBs, like I said, that is the new pandemic. Stakeholders wanting the newest and best kit, but are challenged by economic times and budgets. This seems to be a really big thing with Apple devices. I don't know whether you have Apple devices within your organization, but Apple do a fantastic job of marketing and advertising all of their new kit. The latest and greatest, we're bringing out the M4 Pro Max chipset. We've got this new feature within the Apple MacBook Air and stuff like that. And if you're that way inclined, you get excited by that kind of stuff. Stakeholders come in and go, I saw the Apple presentation, when are we going to get this? And you have to turn around and go, ha, 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 good one. Funny. We don't have any budget. That's not part of our hardware convention. So relax. Take a step back. We'll get there eventually, but not quite yet. So ITAM is kind of the bearer of bad news with things like this. We don't define that, right? We're not the ones saying, no, there's no budget. That's coming from the CFO, the CIO, CTO, whoever, and all the budget, and it all filters all the way down to ITAM, who are then told you do not have the budget that you need. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have to manage all these stakeholders and tell them that they don't have the budget. We're just the bearer of bad news. We're not the ones defining this bad news, okay? Still trying to catch up on HAM. This is a big thing as well that we find a lot of, where they're trying to fast track, and this really is a bugbear of mine. They've already got software asset management set up. They want hardware asset management to be at the same level as their software asset management. Mm-hmm. Not going to happen overnight. They're expecting like a magic wand to go, yeah, but we've got SAM. So boom, HAM is going to be just as mature as SAM. No, ham is its own thing. It needs the love and attention like you gave Sam when you first implemented it. And also try not to keep those two separate, ham and Sam. Try and focus on ITAM so that you can do the proper software asset management, lifecycle management, optimization, and the hardware as well. And this is actually a quote that I heard from a CFO, not for a large organization. I would say more of what I would classify as a medium organization, 2,000 to 3,000 seats, who turned around and said, well, we already do SAM, so ham should be really easy. Okay, nice. I think you've severely underestimated how tough hardware asset management can be. I like your optimism. In reality, yeah, that doesn't quite stick. That does not quite stick. And yeah, big no on that one. If you're doing software asset management, you're focusing on all of the software that's installed on the devices. Unless you're ITAM focused and ITAM inclined, you may not be looking at your inventory coverage percentage, for example. You may not be looking at warranty. You may not be looking at hardware lifecycle. There's so many things that you may not be considering that makes ITAM and ham not just a drag and drop from Sam, if that makes sense. It needs, there we go, give hardware asset management the time, resources, structure, and love that it needs, and it deserves. Because it is typically, historically, a function on its own, a business process on its own, right? There are people that have dedicated ham resources and ham teams. I am pushing the ITAM mantra where we're focusing on both Sam and ham, but that doesn't stop you from having a dedicated ham resource in your organization, dedicated Sam one, all pointing into ITAM. It needs the time, resources, structure, love, attention that it deserves, because the benefits of hardware asset management are huge. Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me you built a time machine out of a DeLorean? Again, a DeLorean as well in the UK in particular. These things are not around a lot. You know, it's the equivalent of us would be like a Vauxhall Corsa or an Astra or something like that. You know, DeLoreans weren't a big thing in the UK. So again, just it made DeLoreans classic, right? And speaking about time machines, we're at an interesting point within hardware asset management and ITAM as a whole, as we're welcoming in the new generations of professionals. These professionals that are entering into our market have grown up with technology. So I'm still in a generation and the age that didn't really grow up with technology, right? My first phone wasn't a smartphone. I still remember dial-up broadband. I remember that when a phone call used to come into the house phone, it would drop whatever internet connection you had. I remember, not having tablets. I remember when the iPad came out, etc., etc. I didn't grow up with the tech like the new generations are. They don't know anything different. They've grown up with tablets. They've grown up with smart things like, Alexa, Siri, all of that kind of stuff. Ring doorbells. Just stuff that we now take for granted. They've grown up with that. Whereas I'm still going, wow, isn't that incredible? Isn't that amazing? I can see from my phone who's at the door with Ring doorbell. I can get Amazon Prime next day. They're used to that. This is just normal for them. And a lot of organizations, it's not they don't factor this in, but maybe we need to change as a whole to adapt to the new generation. Because let's face it, these guys are going to be the C-levels in the future. They're going to want that flexibility. They're going to want to be able to pick and choose what hardware they have. Because, like it says on there, they want what they're used to. Schools, universities, colleges now, they give you either, an iPad, for example, or they give you an Apple device, or they give you a Windows device. And they've grown up with that. They might even have an iPhone as their personal device, because that's what all their friends have. That's what all these influencers have. They're heavily influenced. They are really heavily influenced. And that pushes their decisions on the technologies that they want. They expect that instant and quick delivery. They've got next day delivery. They've got Amazon Prime. They've subscribed for next day fast delivery. So then when you're telling them that within an organization, when doing a hardware refresh, or if they order a new bit of kit that's been approved and it's going to take them 5 to 10 business working days, why? Why would it take my organization, my company that I work for, 5 to 10 business days to get a piece of equipment when I can go on Amazon Prime and have it tomorrow? Of course, there's a lot of nuances around that. There's a lot of internal things that you've got to do, image, asset tagging, get it on the network, or all of that fun stuff. But the physical delivery times, it's still very different to what the end consumer is used to and what the new generation are used to. And I feel the pain. I totally understand it. Even I sometimes, when I'm working with a client and they're looking for a hardware refresh, I'm like, okay, well, let's just start off with 10. 10's not a huge number. How quickly can you get us that, Mr. Hardware or Mrs. Hardware vendor? Okay, that's 5 to 10 business days. It's like, why? Why is it 5 to 10 business working days? I know you've got huge amounts of all, customers that are going to you requesting kit, but so do these next day delivery companies. Why is it such a long delivery time? And maybe that's something that we, as an not really as an ITAM function, because we're driven by the hardware manufacturers, maybe that's something we as ITAM demand more from hardware vendors, to say, look, no, that's not good enough. We need quicker delivery times. We need this equipment to be with us in a much faster time, because that's what our stakeholders are used to. It's a tough one. And when I presented this actually at the ITAM Review Wisdom event, great event by the way, when I did this, a lot of feedback afterwards was like, yeah, I'm finding that a lot within ITAM. I'm finding that a lot within the new people that are joining the organization, the new professionals that have come out of college, universities, etc., that are giving that feedback as to why is it taking so long to get stuff. And then they go, one person came up and said, I literally had someone come up to me with Amazon going, I can get this by 1 p.m. today. Why are you telling me I've got to wait 10 working days for exactly the same model? And it's a good argument. And I don't have the answer yet. I don't know what the answer is, other than at the moment they have to be patient. But at some point, it's surely going to get to the point where it is requiring next day delivery, because people at the hardware vendors, that generation, and are used to next day delivery, are used to being able to pick and choose what they want. And I know a lot of hardware organizations are bringing in artificial intelligence, AI, to their hardware as well. So yeah, who knows what this next generation is going to bring, but they're bringing new demands that historically, from an ITAM perspective, we haven't really seen before. And it's a great and exciting challenge. It gives us more opportunity to show just how influential ITAM and HAM can be to an organization. Now, one of my most favorite scenes within Back to the Future, and I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, is when Marty McFly gets that guitar, gets the guitar on stage at the dance, the school dance, and Marvin Berry, who is Chuck Berry, who did Johnny Be Good, goes and rings him because he's hurt his hand, hasn't he? He's hurt his hand. He can't play the guitar. Marty McFly steps up, the hero that he is. He absolutely shreds that guitar, and there's an unbelievable version of Johnny Be Good. And it's that iconic moment when he's on the phone. Chuck, it's Marvin. You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this. And he puts his phone out, and Marty McFly just going mad on the guitar doing Johnny Be Good. Unbelievable. And yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look for the video on YouTube. It is brilliant. In fact, once I finish this recording, I'm going to go and look at that, because it's just brilliant. It is fantastic. So where are we going? Where is our new sound that we're looking for within ITAM? What's happening in the next 5 years? So within ITAM and hardware asset management specifically, like we've alluded to a lot during this presentation, it's a focus on the user experience. Compliance, cost savings, cost optimization will always be a massive thing at the forefront of organizations' mind, but user experience. How can we make that warm, fuzzy feeling for a user when they get a new piece of equipment? How can we get it to them in a timely and cost-effective manner? How can we make them really feel like they're valued and a huge part of the organization? And we have a big part to play in that in ITAM. Pre-loved equipment, making sure that it is clean, it is in a really good standard that we can redeploy to someone, making sure that they're aware of what their responsibilities are as a user and a stakeholder of ITAM, making sure that all the software is pre-installed before they get the device. There's so many things that we can be doing and should be doing from an ITAM perspective. A lot of hardware vendors and phone vendors are now implementing AI-driven stuff within their hardware, and that's really exciting. I know one hardware vendor is actually implementing their own AI that identifies problems with the hardware before the user notices anything. And this AI automatically creates a ticket to their own service management portal and can also create a ticket for your own internal management as well. And this is even before the user experienced it. So it may be looking at the performance of the device and going, yep, the battery is going to really deplete soon. This battery is not in a good way, or this bit's overheating, or that isn't working as it should be. And that's really cool, because if you can get on top of that before the user realizes, and you go to the user and say, look, we noticed that the battery is actually not really going to be in a good position, so we need to refresh that or replace the battery now. That looks so good from an end user perspective, going, wow, amazing that you've identified that before I've even noticed it. Thank you for ensuring that there's going to be a limited downtime to me. And this is all driven by AI. This is driven by AI analysis. And that's where it's going. AI is going to be huge for us, and it's going to be a massive positive for ITAM and hardware asset management and software asset management and software licensing and SaaS, FinOps, cloud. AI can be your best friend, and it will be in the future. We're still at the early stages of it now, but it will be a big factor in the future. Hardware is lasting longer as well. Gone are the days when, you could really tell an old piece of kit by the way that it looked. It had a massive back box. It was that horrible, I don't even know what colour you'd call that, cream, as you can see from that picture there. They were bigger. There was more plastic around it. The spec, the screen, the spec, everything about it really aged the device. And you can really tell even when you're watching a film from the 2000s, or even 2010s, that, oh, wow, look at that iPhone. Oh, that looks really old. Wow, look at that laptop. That looks horrendous. It really aged it. But nowadays, kit from 2020, 2019 doesn't look that old. It doesn't look that old, and it's still supporting the latest OS updates, operating system updates. It's still supporting software updates. It's lasting longer. Some organisations are even running their laptops for 5 years now. Phones are going from 2 years to 4 years because of cost optimization, and also because of green IT and sustainability and really getting the most out of the hardware that they're buying and using. And I mean, I'm looking at the equipment that organisations are buying now from Lenovo, Dell, HP, Microsoft, Apple, etc. And I'm going, unless something revolutionary happens, this kit is going to look good in 5-6 years' time. Even my partner, for example, she's got a MacBook that she's had since like 2017, 2018. It still looks like a MacBook looks now, but it's really old. It still boots so quickly, it still runs. Hardware is lasting longer, and that's a great thing for us because it means that we can sweat the assets and build out longer hardware life cycles. And of course, we are in the grips of tough economic times. Hardware budgets now are challenging, and they're just going to get even more challenging as we move forward. I mean, yeah, it's tough at the moment, and the forecast is that it's going to get tougher. And again, I keep saying it, but I really want to reiterate it. We play a huge role in supporting these challenging hardware budgets. ITAM, in a weird way, thrives when things are going wrong in the world and there's no money, because we optimize, we sweat assets, we reduce spend, we reduce costs. So yeah, we are going to have a huge role to play in the next 5 years. There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull? This is when Marty uses the word back in the 80s. Heavy was a slang word for like, whoa, that's big. Don't use that anymore. Haven't heard that word being used in that context in a long time. And also potentially it didn't make it across the pond over into the UK. But yeah, in America, heavy was a big slang term back in the day, but haven't heard it so much anymore. So, but where are we going? What's going to happen in the ITAM world? And I love that image, by the way, which shows this utopian drones flying around, above ground road networks, grass being and trees growing on buildings and stuff like that. I love that kind of image. It looks really cool. Again, AI did that for me with a couple of prompts. Really easy. AI smartphones. Even during the recent European Championships in football, one of the big sponsors that was going around the electric advertising boards was for an AI phone. It's here. It's coming. It's happening already. We're moving away from smartphones to what they're determining as intelligent phones. Phones that can do more for you. And let's be honest, phones are already listening to us. They're already going from smart to intelligent phones. Because you can be talking about something, you go on your phone and suddenly you're getting adverts for whatever you've just been talking about. So don't talk about Christmas presents and stuff like that and then let your children go on the phone because they might see things they don't want to see. Yeah, it's crazy. We were just sat there the other day talking about things like Disney World and Florida and stuff like that. Go on our phones, the first advert we get is for Disney World. The next one is Visit Florida. I mean, we haven't typed anything in. It's listening to us. They're already listening to us. But yeah, there's a lot of AI phone companies that are coming out of the woodworks at the moment that are putting a lot of money into marketing and advertising and showing how their artificial intelligence takes their phones to the next level. And surely that's going to end up in corporate organizations soon enough. Also got AIOS, which are AI operating systems, which include things like machine learning, performance management of the hardware, etc. Like I mentioned, that some hardware vendors are implementing software vendors that develop the artificial intelligent operating systems, which is a mouthful. They're also implementing AI to again look at how we're using software, how we're using the hardware, trends, all of that kind of stuff to give you all of that valuable data. Again, from an ITAM perspective, if we can integrate this somehow into our processes, into our hardware refreshing, into our management, into our monitoring and controls, amazing, bring it on. AI impact on data centers, how are they going to cope? I saw an article about the resources that AI is causing on data centers with resource management, physical hardware supply chain, green IT and sustainability. So whilst we're getting really excited about artificial intelligence and how that can work, and obviously cloud infrastructures moving away from our physical servers and server rooms and data centers, how is that actually having an impact then, as my chair starts creaking, apologies. How does that then physically impact on these data centers? How are they going to cope? I know we're outsourcing our green IT, our power and consumption on the world, but that's just being moved to a data center. Organizations then get that warm, fuzzy feeling, say, oh, aren't we doing an amazing job? We've outsourced this, and therefore our usage, our sustainability matrix, our ESG has, gone through the roof because we've done that. Yeah, but you're just shifting it somewhere else. The impact on the world is still there. Cloud doesn't mean that you've got rid of everything. It just goes to a data center somewhere. And if you're starting to implement AI, how's that going to impact the data centers? We don't know that yet. AI is changing the way that we use hardware and software. In a good way in some respects, because it's using less computing and resourcing power on the actual device, because AI is looking at how you're optimizing and using things, reducing things as and when you need it to be. I saw a demonstration recently whereby it's looking at the resources that you're using when you're using certain applications and taking resources from this core, using this, doing this memory, just all of this stuff that's way too techie for me. But the flip side of that then are people getting lazy. Controversial one, but things like ChatGPT and stuff like that, it's really obvious when people are doing this. And how do I say this in a diplomatic way? I've seen people using and implementing ChatGPT driven ITAM documentation and processes. I don't agree with that at all. It's a tough one because it is very obvious when it's AI driven, when it's ChatGPT driven. In some cases, the ITAM team have had a push and a real force to get a process in place or a document in place, and I get that. I really do get that. But you can't just copy and paste a prompt from ChatGPT and then put it into production as a ITAM document. Maybe we'll do another webinar on this or a video on this, but you can't. It's not fit for purpose. You still need that human to go out and to actually mold it to how that organization works. And yeah, I'm sure that all people watching this aren't doing this, but if you are, stop. You can use it to give you that foundation, to give you a guidance onto how that document should look, how that process should work, etc. But don't just copy and paste it from ChatGPT. And I've seen some replies to things that I've asked clients for that have clearly been AI driven. So are we getting a bit lazy? Is it laziness? Is it working smarter, not harder? Don't know. I'm on the fence. I see the benefits of it, and it's great sometimes from a technical perspective when you're looking for script prompts and stuff like that. But from an ITAM perspective, let's not be lazy. AI, ChatGPT, etc. is not quite there yet. And like we said, please don't forget about the environmental impacts of AI. It still needs something physical somewhere that's going to generate power and have an impact on our planet. Let's think about that. Let's just not forget about that, because it seems like a lot of people have. Well, that's your name, isn't it? Calvin Klein. It's written all over your underwear. This is when he gets hit by his future dad in the car, and his future mum, which is a really weird sentence, ends up looking after him in her house. He's wearing Calvin Klein underwear. She thinks his name's Calvin because Calvin Klein hasn't been invented yet. You know, classic. What a film, honestly. So the evolution of a hardware asset management professional, increased focus on the strategy and supporting business goals. ITAM, I really can see ITAM being one of the big business areas that is going to have a seat at the table when it comes to that C-level conversation and influence. Leveraging AI for administrative tasks, like I said before, not for policies, processes and controls and stuff like that, but for maybe building out information on license types so that you can provide education and awareness for your organization. Maybe even for some data analysis in the future. AI can certainly help with that. Enhanced support and collaboration with information security. It should already be there, but InfoSec, cybersecurity, whatever you call it, is still a big focus and will continue to be a big focus moving forward. And ITAM and hardware asset management has a huge role in that. I mentioned before, obviously, about that availability and delivery to end users. It is going to have to be quicker in the future. The e-commerce side of things, drop shipping, next day delivery, everything that the next generation of professional are used to. We're going to have to start getting used to that as well. Increased level of care towards IT assets. Like we said, these things are lasting longer. They're looking better. They're prolonged life. But the end user that has it needs to look after it more. There needs to be a duty of care when you're receiving this equipment to make sure that you're not dropping it, scratching it, damaging it, etc. Because then at the end of the life, there's going to be increased resale value. We still need to do a much better job on how we're communicating and educating key stakeholders about ITAM and HAM. I've seen this happen amazingly in some organisations and then just be in no form of communication or collaboration whatsoever in others. There needs to be a consistent line of education and communication on ITAM and HAM. Even if you've already done it, there's no such thing as over-communicating. Keep doing it. Keep promoting ITAM, HAM, whatever you're doing. We're also seeing a wider scope of what considered is a hardware asset. These things include things like drones. Depending on the industry that you're working in, there could be some weird and wacky stuff that comes into the ITAM world. Embrace it. It may not have an inventory tool on it. It may not be automatically populated, but still you can play a key role in managing it and further promoting ITAM and hardware asset management. Pressure to optimize, very much like the SAM world. All of those kind of orders you're doing in the software space, you can do in the hardware space. Is it being used? How often is it being used? Do you really need multiple devices? Okay, we're just going to strip back to people having a laptop and BYOD. Okay, we're going to strip back to people just having hot desks and a virtual workspace, so we don't need all these laptops. So many ways in which you can optimize, like you're already doing in the software asset management space, that you can do in your hardware asset management space. There's a lot of tools coming out now with real-time tracking of mobile IT assets, and by that I mean stuff that you can pick up and move. So yeah, laptop, phones, tablets, maybe even portable scanners, stuff like that. And there's some really cool toolings. They haven't quite made it into the ITAM world yet, but where you can track the device as it goes through like RFID scanners and things like that within an office, where you can see it moving floors or you can see it leaving a building. And then it's got GPS on it, so you can see where it is in a city and stuff like that. Bit stalkerish, but if it's your own equipment the organisation's purchased, why not? I mean, I'm sure there's some data laws and some GDPR stuff and stuff like that out there when it leaves the organisation's premises. But even if it just takes snapshots, it will help when people lose or have devices stolen. Could be a thing for the future. Real-time stock reporting for availability and DR purposes. If we do go through, touch wood, we never do go through what we've been through in 2020 and 2021. But yeah, real-time stock scanning again. So when it leaves the stock room, it scans the device to say this has been checked out. In the event of a cyber attack as well, where there's been a few of those where they've urgently needed equipment to be sent to a certain location or office because devices have been infected and impacted, they can't go on the network. However, people still need to work, and you've got that real-time stock reporting when things come in and out, automatically updates the AMDB so that you can see where you stand and you can react in the event of a disaster. And an even bigger focus on ESG, sustainability and green IT, and also seen Jaeger talking about green ops as well. We have a huge role to play in this. We are responsible for a lot of this equipment. We have a huge role to play in ESG, sustainability, green IT, green ops, green software, all of that kind of stuff, because that's their assets. They're what we manage. They're what we have an impact on, what our level of expertise is on. And through IT asset disposition, through IT asset recycling, reselling, etc., we play a key role in supporting clients and organizations in achieving their goals for that as well. Again, this quote comes from when he does shred his guitar and he does the Johnny B. Good bit. So how can we prepare for the future? Please keep up to date with technology news and advancements. Keep learning. Don't just think that you know everything, because you don't. Even I am constantly learning. I'm looking at how I can learn about artificial intelligence, how I can learn about FinOps, green ops, green software, green IT, sustainability, social responsibility, all of that kind of stuff. Keep expanding your horizon for ITAM. Don't just shun things away and say that, no, this isn't my responsibility, it's not within ITAM, because it probably is coming into ITAM. Embrace it. Show how ITAM can make a difference, and show how ITAM can have a huge impact on other things. Keep networking. Speak to your peers. Contact me. I'll shoot your ear off about ITAM. I'll talk to anyone about ITAM, the future of it, how we can help, how that we can evolve, how we can grow as an industry. I bounce ideas off each other. Whatever the case may be, just keep talking to people, networking, build up that knowledge, and always ask the question, how can this relate to IT asset management and hardware asset management? No matter what the challenge is, the problem, the objective, the goal, whatever, how can this relate to ITAM or hardware asset management, and how can I help? Make ITAM, call it ITAM, indispensable for an organization. Make it a seat at that table. Make it like the organization cannot run without it, because they can't. So whenever you're seeing things that another team's presenting or your C-level is presenting, think how can ITAM help with this? Keep asking that question, keep pondering that question. And that is it for the presentation. So this is, like I said, what I presented in the summer. I've finally gotten around to do it. Sorry for the delay on that. I really hope you found it useful. If you've got any comments, questions, thoughts, musings, ponderings, whatever, feel free to put it in the comments. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me an email, do whatever, speak to me wherever you want to. But I really appreciate you making it this far into the webinar. And I'm going to take my glass off now. I really appreciate you making it this far into the webinar. I really hope you found it useful, that it's given you some food for thought. Before I go, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And until next time, happy ITAMing. Long live ITAM. ITAM is the best. I love it. Absolutely love it.